Hi there everyone, welcome to week 7, and that is looking at reporting institutions, and now we're going to look at reporting government. So last week we talked about court, which is obviously an institution, and this time we're actually going to look at the different levels of government just very briefly, talking about local, state and federal, and how you might report them. So we're just going to have a quick overview of political reporting, and then we're going to concentrate on local reporting. The reason being, this is obviously a first year course at this particular point in time, and local government is where journalists cut their teeth. Very rarely would you ever start working in federal politics. So basically, if you're working for a local or regional news outlet, you'll be looking at local government, and that is local council. So local councils they tend to be low-key in some aspects, but not low-key in the others. For example, we know about mayors. You might never have seen your local councillor. Metropolitan councils such as the Brisbane City Council, which is actually one of the world's largest single city councils, because it's not different boroughs, it's actually one huge council, so very high profile, and therefore often stated in metropolitan news. Whereas if you lived in Sydney, very rarely would you actually hear of your local councillors, for example, because you've got different councils, Warringah, Ku-ring-gai and so on. So different councils are run very differently, but really local news outlets such as really local papers, Quest newspapers, for example, in Queensland, they might concentrate on a particular suburb, and that's where they're interested in local councillors. If you're obviously working in regional news, such as we're in Rockhampton, Mackay, Townsville, Wollongong, and so on, then you'll be looking at your local council for your regional news. And when you're looking at state government, you're often working at a metro news. So if you're working in Brisbane, Sydney for one of the metro daily papers or for one of the metropolitan news outlets, then you'll be probably working at state government level. And then obviously when you're at federal government level, you work within the press gallery, which I do go into a little bit of detail in this week's lesson. The press gallery is known as a beast unto itself. You have to be generally quite a senior journalist to be part of the press gallery. And it's probably a really good example of why, as a journalist, having an understanding of politics, if you don't have an understanding of politics and you don't know how government works, you're going to really struggle in terms of reporting. So we have course Communication and Democracy in Australia, which covers it. But if you're doing this course and you don't have a really good knowledge of how government works, then my advice is to look at some of the resources I've provided and start learning. So a couple of the issues when you're reporting politics in Australia is that there are a number of news values that are prioritised, and they are prominence. Politicians are high profile, particularly celebrities who become politicians, but nonetheless, if it's a politician, then there's a chance they're a prominent person. Conflict is generally particularly at state and federal level, conflict is highlighted. At local level, probably not so much. If journalists aren't necessarily looking for conflict, you might just genuinely do a report that your local member opened something or that they made an announcement. But when you're getting to areas where there is an opposition, for example, obviously at state politics and federal politics where there are legitimate oppositions, then what someone else has to say about something is obviously going to be newsworthy. And then impact. Obviously politics impacts people because we are governed by political announcements, by political issues, and so people are interested in what's happening with government and council of the day. And then proximity. Proximity is obviously about how you make something local. So, for example, if there is a federal announcement, let's talk about carbon tax, then, if you're a local journalist, you might be looking for your local federal member to actually make a comment about how the carbon tax is going to be relevant or impact on local people. So journalists at very local levels will work to make a bigger issue, like a federal issue, local, and in doing so they'll work down through their political chain, I suppose, and unless you would very rarely, if you're working in Rockhampton, attempt to get a comment from the federal minister, you would get a federal member to talk. So just be conscious of that. So when you're reporting local government, you need to be aware of who's responsible for what. So different councillors have different responsibilities. There's also a lot of politics in local council. Some people really dislike other people. You know, there's a lot of history. People are very local. They've probably been there forever. Some councillors have been there for a long, long time, others not so long. And so, yeah, there are a lot of politics that you probably should be aware of as a journalist. But at saying that, you need to remain objective and don't take sides, because that will backfire on you regardless. Public and media can generally attend meetings every now and then, and this has certainly happened to me, where you've been kicked out because an issue is getting too heated, or they will close the session so that they can talk about something that might be commercial in confidence. So expect that that's the case. Obviously, if you are a reporter, you would have contacts. You would know your council public relations people. They would generally expect you to be attending meetings. So, but as a student, then you will just need to make contact with the local council and tell them you're going to be there, and you'll find they're very helpful generally. Councillors are very keen to communicate with the local media through local community through media. Some councils have policies that gag councillors, others don't. Others are a bit more renegade, so that's something that you will find out along your way. So, but councils generally have policies, particularly, obviously you've got the professional staff within a council, like the CEO of a council, but then you've also got the councillors, so they work a little bit differently, and they'll work differently depending on which council they work with. So just a quick summary, you need to be aware of the political processes. Local council is actually the beginning point of any political reporting you might do. It's interesting, it's fascinating, it's ever-changing. Essentially, if you turn up to a council meeting, it's a bit like court, news will occur. It might not be the biggest news in the world, but generally speaking, it will be something that will impact somebody in the community, so it's worth taking notice of. So enjoy the week, and let me know if you have any questions.